shave a tenth of a millimeter off of your nose to make it all the more perfect. Isn't that what we need for a plastic surgeon?
I don't need a plastic surgeon. I'm already perfect.
You heard it here on Talking Niagara first. Dave thinks he's perfect. So welcome to Talking Niagara, everybody, with myself, Peter Giblett, and Dave Wheeler. Hey, Dave, did you know something? We're now live on the new Talking Niagara page.
Oh, all right. There's a new Talking Niagara.
I tried it yesterday. We got about 100 followers on the new Talking Niagara page. So if anybody's out there trying, seeing us on Talking Niagara, say hi, especially. We're not going to bite a head off because you say hi to us on Talking Niagara. We're always prepared to open a show and listen to people, aren't we?
Yeah, as long as they agree with us.
You mean so long as they agree with Dave?
Yeah. Well, there's your opinion, there's my opinion, and there's a right opinion. So we'll go with my opinion.
No, but my opinion's always the right opinion.
Actually, I heard from a fellow Kiwanian, and he said he listened in on our show, part of our show the other day, and he liked it. He said that he says, I can't believe how much research you did. Well, the first half of the show, of course, was all Mike Cushman's research.
Yeah,
right there, and then and the rest of it, I just said that after reading so many articles on the topics we've discussed, it sounds like we've done a lot of research, but it's actually accumulated knowledge from many, many articles that we've read.
Oh yeah, well, exactly, because some of these topics that we've come across, they've come back from 3 years ago, maybe last month, last week, etc. So things like homelessness, where they're always on the go, whereas things like the approval for the Toronto power generating station, that topic is something we handled a few weeks ago, right?
Yes, we did, but now it's like a double thumbs up. They have a private developer that is willing to go in and finally take that beautiful old building, that majestic old sort of neoclassical building that people like. I mean, seriously, like that was the first major power station on the Canadian side. And look at the way they made it look, right? It's a beautiful building. And yet you look at other industrial buildings nowadays and they're just form and utility. But in the day, it meant something.
I know. This is actually, there's actually one of the things I would say about having traveled widely in Europe, how many buildings of this nature that were built in the 18th and 19th century that you come across and you look at them and you say, what were they? And they say, a factory or something like that. And it's like, you daren't knock them down. Today, they might be part of a housing complex or something, but they are absolutely superb.
Yeah, some of them look really, 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 really nice. And it still bugs me about that the old police station downtown, who was designed by the same person who did, I think, the Queen's Park, or though it was Toronto City Hall or something like that. But he was a famous architect, and yet we let it wallow away like that.
Yeah, we need to do something. The city needs to take control of it and do something with it. But as you and I both know, the city never does anything like that.
No, we have and hopefully we could talk a little bit about this later when there's an article about what the Ontario government's plans for the tourism of Niagara are. We'll get
to that next. In fact, we'll get to that one right next.
Yeah. So this, we're talking about the old power station, the old Toronto Authority power station, right on River Road, right across from the Scow. What a history even to start out with. I was just imagining when I was reading the article that like there's going to be high-end hotel rooms in that place, and they'll probably look out, and some people will complain, "Oh, what a shame that they got a big hunk of junk out there to interfere with the view,
No,
beautiful Niagara." I'm thinking there's going to be somebody
actually,
that thinks that, and then
that's
they're
got
going
to
to
be a
have
reason.
then they're going to have to be told that of the heroic rescue that happened there in 1918. Wouldn't that be fabulous to know that?
Well, that's actually one of the reasons to actually even stay there on the riverside. You know, to be looking out upon that, especially if you were there the day you're there, you're looking out the hotel room, and all of a sudden the thing shifts.
Yeah, well,
Can you
maybe.
imagine the drama there?
Well, yeah, but to me, the drama was imagining time after time after time, Red Hill going out there on the ropes.
I know, I get you, I understand. You're a history buff, but I'm kind of, well, the thing about the scow right now that fascinates me is, when is it going to go over the falls?
Well, it'll probably disintegrate before it goes over. Remember, it's steel. If it starts to
I know,
break up, it
I
will
know.
just settle
But
into
every
the
once in a
soil
while
there.
it keeps moving, doesn't it? It keeps moving, and we kind of go, oh, you know, and another 3 or 4 foot or something.
Yeah, but that was my first thought. If somebody comes there and they paid a lot of money for a room and they didn't know the history, and they looked out at that and they said, "Oh, how unfortunate that breaks the view of a beautiful of a beautiful river scene." Until you know the story, then all of a sudden that scow becomes part of history
Oh
and
yeah.
it becomes part of the view.
Well, in
I
fact,
remember
actually,
I was down there I was down there a couple times, and people didn't know what the scow was, and so I did. There was a lady and her kids, and she happened to be standing right beside me, right near the power station there, and she was trying to tell her kid, "Oh, I don't know what that is. It's just some garbage that come down the got got lodged there." And then I told them the story, and
mhm.
as she's looking at me, I could see there's incredulity, uh, well,
Yeah, the kid.
incredulity in her eyes, and I had a feeling she thought I was making it up. And I says, "No, no, you can look it up. You can look it up in the history books." Yeah, it was an amazing story. About,
And the gentleman has his offspring in the falls still living here today,
yeah,
right?
and we got our own riverman right here. It's Gary Wilkins. Gary Wilkins has gone down by the river all the time. He was like Red Hill. He's just kind of like a modern day Red Hill, in and around the river all the time.
Yeah. Okay.
Except he's not Red Hill, he's Green Bastard. But well,
Yeah. We love you, Gary. Not.
well, I love Gary too. Yeah.
Yeah. Always, yeah, always actually the person who wants a bit of fun. Yeah, so basically what they're doing is they're taking the power station, they're adding hotel rooms onto the edge, onto the water side of it, but they're also making that into hotel suites, etc. anyway, in the main block of that power station. But they're also putting some, historical displays there, aren't they? So it's making it part museum, part shopping center, part museum.
Yeah. So it's going to be a good thing. The thing that bothers me the most is I want the public to have access to the main floor there. The public should have, there's going to be public viewing areas, I guess, and then private ones inside. But that building is so nice. It should be, part of it should be public, and they should preserve some of the generation stuff, the power generation facilities that are there, sort of incorporate them into the
Yeah,
background, into the overall ambiance of the place. But
yeah.
really, we should, as citizens of Niagara Falls, be able to go in there and appreciate the days of yore,
Oh yeah.
1906.
Well, and the other thing about that is that I also would like to see glass floors in order that we can see, if you're on the ground floor there and you're looking down, and underneath there is things of historical importance. Be nice to have a glass floor that you can see underneath where you are, what's going on underneath.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. But whatever the case, I think they should also adopt some of the things they did to the other power station where they've made it a museum and an attraction. Those are the things that are the right way to go. People these days are not just looking, not coming to look at something that's famous. They have interest. Their minds want to know. It's a different sort of person.
What is this building? Why is it here? How did it help humanity in the past? That type of questioning.
Well, whether it helped or not helped, it's whatever the historical significance of it. And why does it look like it does? This is 1906, probably just about the transition period of building things for function and building things for aesthetic worth. So quite definitely it was very important to the architectures and those people who were putting the money into that building to have it look aesthetically pleasing. And if you are the backers, the people who have the money putting it in, nowadays it's right down to dollars and cents, what is necessary and what isn't. And in this particular case, in their mind, it was very necessary to put a lot of money into the looks of the building.
Yeah, and Sam Oosterhoff basically is saying the restoration of this historic monument is our region's legacy to energy innovation, is part of our government's plan to support Niagara as a key tourist destination.
Yeah, if you're talking about reenactments, I think we should reenact that rescue.
I'd love to see. Well, that's an interesting question. Yeah. Without anybody being in danger, of course.
Well, we could, like, it's the mayor's responsibility to be out there with the rescued guys. I suggest he takes Peter Angelo with him, and and
a round of applause for that idea, Dave. Not.
And I think Sandra McKinnon should be the one that does the rescue.
Yeah. Dave and Dan Hill in Chippewa. Yep, we know of them. Yes, we've also got some other personalities in this area, like Kip Finn, who's related as well. Morning, Mike, and hi, Gary. Absolutely.
Yes, indeed. So that is part that I'm very, very pleased, because for 40 years, every time I looked at that building, and also the police station, but that one as well, every time I look at it, I was really afraid that someone was going to put it to the wrecking ball, because we have this attitude in Niagara Falls. We have a very strange attitude when it comes to our heritage buildings. Knock them up, knock them down, and put up something new.
Well, I also want to see something also similar happen to the one down in near the falls as well, the one underneath.
That would be fabulous if we could do that as well. Yeah, because look, there is if we want to now segue into the next article about what the Ontario government is going to do.
Sure.
I think this is a good plan, because you've mentioned that other power station.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the province is committed to a big, bold vision for Niagara tourism.
Yes.
Right.
And what the Ontario government is saying, and particularly Stan Chu, I think that's how his name is, or Stan Cho.
Chu, isn't it? I believe it's Chu, not Cho.
CHO. Is that Chu or Cho?
Yeah. Okay. All right. Cho or Chu. Yeah. Okay. Either way.
Yes. Now he's the minister of tourism, basically, isn't he? And
he is. Yes.
Yes. So what he's had talks with, now we talked about Doug Ford's grand plan, sort of huge idea of digging a tunnel for a highway. But sometimes you have to admire people with big ideas, because he has seen Niagara Falls as a very underutilized tourist place. Stan Chow is in agreement with him. he thinks we could double the amount of tourists that we have here. He says basically that we've had a parochial idea of our tourism from for too long a time. We're inwardly looking. He is looking at expanding the appeal of Niagara Falls into many more areas. He's
They're
saying
also looking at
we have Port Colborne, we have Fort Erie, we have a whole region, and yet everybody comes for a 1 or 2 day stay in the falls.
And you were talking about industrial history. You think about the Welland Ship Canal. Right? I learned about the Welland Ship Canal when I was like 6 or 7 and thought, wow, what a fantastic place that would be to go see. You know?
Yes, and that's part of what what Cho is trying to do. He's trying to incorporate more than just the falls. He's talking about the canal. He's talking about the farming. He's talking about dining. He's talking about Port Colborne. He's talking about river cruises and Great Lakes cruises that are incorporated in part of the tourist network that connects to Niagara Falls. Right now, we're inwardly looking. We have a tentacle out to Niagara on the Lake. We have a tentacle down to Fort Erie from Niagara Falls. But how many tourists that come? They only come for a day or two, and they're unaware of the extensive history, the incredible geography, the industrial history, as we have said before, as you had mentioned there, and the power stations. So there is a lot here that is unexploited. There is a lot here that when the tourist comes into town. Now, we've had this old business. As soon as the tourists get in here, huckster them to death, shake them down for as much money in a couple of days as you can. Cho has a different idea altogether. If you want to gamble, they're going to make a lot more gambling dens for you to gamble in. If you like river cruises or boat cruises, you can get a cruise from Port Colborne. When your cruise docks in Port Colborne, you can get off and come right to Niagara Falls and Fort Erie. You can be part of a history tour. You can be part of a geography tour, all these other things. So what they're looking outside and trying to incorporate a lot of different threads.
There's a whole lot of stories that can be told. And the thing about the stories is that stories are often best told by individuals who know something about it. It's like what you were saying about that story that you told about Red Hill on the scout and the scow rescue to that family. Well, you imagine if you were doing that job and you were telling people about that actually imparts so much knowledge upon the people of the world, the people that come here. And that wealth of knowledge is about so many things, you know, the War of 1812 and how it impacts Niagara on the Lake, the Chippewa, the Battle of Lundy's Lane, etc., etc. You've got the industrial history of the Welland Ship Canal. You've got so much more, and even the James Beck Power Station, that's the working power station, has an incredible tour around it as well.
You mean Adam Beck?
Adam Beck, sorry. Adam Beck. Yep, thank you.
How about the Jeff Beck Power Station?
I meant Adam Beck. You're right. Okay, so some of the things I noticed, I opened up a link to the Reddit article on this one, by the way, and there's a few things that are people saying there. Is one of the comments is about, well, it'd be nice to see the Niagara-on-the-Lake Airport opened up as an international airport. I don't know how many additional flights coming in you'll need, with that. But they're basically, if you see that as say maybe half the size of Hamilton or something, approaching the size of Hamilton. Maybe
there's different visions here, and I think the different vision here is Niagara Falls is always looking at things like, if you have an airport, you can bring in the high rollers and the people with money to fill up the casinos. Cho, on the other hand, is thinking much more beyond that. He's thinking in bringing in people to experience a whole variety of different things they might like. If they're into geology, they can go up and down the river. If they're into history, they can do the same thing.
Yeah.
Remember, Two, we have some of the great theaters here in Southern Ontario. The Shaw Festival is amazing, and if
Yeah.
like I love going to plays, and I would go to a lot more if I could afford them. Now here's what he says. You have the rich history of Niagara on the Lake and a vibrant and thriving theater culture and art sector. You have a beautiful beaches in Crystal Beach, and the history of Port Colborne and Nickel Beach. You have deep water with cruise ships that are docking there, and a gateway into the largest freshwater lake system on the planet in the Great Lakes, with tours operating as we speak. Chow said the problem, however, and this is what really got me, is the really long list of things that really on its own are special and have never been tied in together as a vision that can be marketed globally. That's exactly what I think too. They've always had all these little separate things and never combined them into one big vision. These are the things you can do.
Yeah. And especially since now things like Marineland have gone.
Yes, and what can you do with Marineland? You could do a whole lot of things in Marineland. If you really wanted to, you could change Marineland into a zoo or a specific place where you can house animals at risk, or you can or other things like that, like some zoos have done. We could have a massive fun park for kids, and where kids can run around and interact. Like the climbing thing there, that's right at the whirlpool, where the Spanish Arrow car connects. There's a thing that kids can climb and get some exercise and have some fun.
I want to do that one day. I want to do that adventure park. I know I'll have the kids whizzing past me, but hey, I want to be up there.
Yeah. Well, I could just see it now. The kids come along, and the mothers down. Well, you've been up there long enough. And they're saying back, well, no, I haven't. I haven't experienced everything. There's a tubby old guy up here getting in my way.
And they're saying, well, if you want me to come down, you've got to come up and get me.
Yeah.
No, but I think things like that are actually things like that are fun, especially if they're right priced, right?
That's another factor, and I wish he would have addressed that, because when he's talking about this thorough and more comprehensive look, like we here in Niagara Falls, like there's a handful of families that seem to be running the whole show, and they are inwardly looking. And when you talk to people who own motels or this or that, it's just that they want to get their money as fast as they can. They're not included into a vision that will sustain more tourism and better tourism for a longer period of time. And that's why I like Cho's vision here. And I guess he shares that with Ford. Sees something that I think we are too parochial here. And we've always been parochial. We've been a little island of tourism, and we can't see outside the borders.
Some of the comments, I've been looking on Reddit as well about this article, which links to this article, whole heap of comments on Reddit about this. And one of the comments about it is that, we need better connections, more GO stations, more rail connections into the area. And I guess the issue there is that if we're going to be landing, particularly at this new airport that we're going to create, which I'm assuming is the one at Niagara on the Lake, then having some form of rail connection into that airport would be a good idea.
Oh, of course, or even just good shuttle buses out of there. We can make them electric to make everybody happy, because it's environmentally friendly. The thing here is there has to be connections of all kinds coming into Niagara, all kinds.
Yeah.
Like the first thing an American tourist has to do is deal with the traffic coming over the border, and he's sitting there for 2-3 hours getting across the border sometimes.
Yeah. And of course the negative comment that comes with that, and the reason for the comment we all understand. Sweet, can't wait for the QEW to be worse in the summer.
Yeah. Well, that's the problem. And that is one of the points that
It's the Friday night. It's the Friday night,
pushing.
Saturday lunchtime commuter, isn't it?
Well, Cho has put this out there that transportation links have to be improved in a big, big way.
Yeah.
I think when we became a regional area with our transportation, I think that was the right way to go. Even though at current times that's very expensive, cost prohibitive almost, but it will grow, particularly when people find the more efficient it is. And when I had a couple of Jamaicans living in my house for a week when they were supposed to after Kiwanis convention in Stratford came to an end. There was a couple of Jamaican couple that thought they were going to go to Toronto to stay with their neighbors' relatives, and found out that did not communicate well, and they were stuck. So I says, well, come to my place, Niagara Falls. You can't. That's a great place. So they stayed in my place, and they took the bus everywhere. They took the bus to St. Catharines. Quickly, they learned how to use the bus. They took the bus to St. Catharines to do some shopping. They took the bus here and there. They took the WeGo bus up and down the river. Had a great old time.
And Chris makes a good point. Have you seen our bus station lately? Absolutely, Chris. That's why it's disgusting. We need to replace that bus hub downtown. Whoever thought, by the way, of a hub in Dorchester and Morrison were out of their mind. The hub, it belongs downtown. You need downtown to downtown connectivity. We need rapid flow buses that run, even if they're once an hour. We need one that goes from Niagara to St. Catharines on a regular basis. All right. Geographically, Ottawa is at a far corner of the peninsula. That's true. All right.
If you start building the transportation networks around to exploit all aspects of tourism, if you can get tourism, if you want to encourage tourists from Niagara Falls to go to St. Catharines, see the Welland Canal and things like that, maybe that is where you begin to expand your transportation system. As far as hubs, you're going to need more than one.
Yeah, but you see, for example, the hub that they have in downtown St. Catharines, it may have its problems, but it's actually a well put together hub. It's in a good location. It means that you can get connected to the St. Catharines Transit and go out from that hub. All of the St. Catharines Transit hubs out of that downtown hub. I don't know anybody even knows where our transit goes right now, or how our transit system works in Niagara Falls.
Well,
and I'm very critical of it.
It's a rather slow thing. And soon as and actually I invite, because I think here in Niagara we have an inwardly looking view of things. Yeah, I think we are parochial. We have an idea of that. We need outside ideas, someone with a bigger vision. We can't seem to expand our vision beyond our own little area here. When the counselors talk and when the regional people talk, they think of in terms of a very small area, and it kind of reminds me of the United States, a microcosm. Like the United States thinks only inside itself. That's why the people are so appallingly ignorant. And I know that they're beautiful people, but they are appallingly ignorant because they only look inside. They never look outside their borders. The average person is never encouraged to see what's outside their borders. They think it's and I think that's the same sort of analogy. That's the analogy I use for Niagara. I always think it's a parochial system. Those people looking inwardly, and rather than have bold ideas for things that interconnect with the tourism. And we can also interconnect with Buffalo. Buffalo's a fabulous city. You could take people to Fort Erie, Buffalo, that whole loop think of going from Fort Erie to Buffalo and all the way up the east side of the river, and then crossing back over and coming down the west part of the river, and ending up in Niagara Falls as sort of as an end of your trip. That would be great. What about cycling tours that go that way? I mean, I think it would be a fabulous idea, and it can encourage all kinds of people.
Well, there was a cycle race from Toronto to. There was a cycle race that I know the stage that it was on was from Toronto to Niagara Falls, and essentially finished finished at the top of Clifton Hill, I believe.
Yeah, and you don't have to have a race. You have a lot of people that like the cycle.
Well, that whole race, this was about 8 or 9 years ago. I remember the race, and that whole race triggered an absolute furore of people cycling across the neighborhood.
Yes, and I think that would be a perfect path to be able to take it from Fort Erie across the Buffalo all the way up to Lewiston, cross back over, and at Queenston, basically, and go to Niagara-on-the-Lake, and then go. All kinds of things are possible there. So, anyway, boat trips up and down the river, boat tours, history. So anyway, we do need another set of eyes from outside of our area. We have a tour. We're stuck in our zone, and we need another set of eyes for originality. And I think maybe this is the way to go, because they look at the whole picture.
Yeah. All right. Okay, we got one more comment. That's the old marathon route. No, I was talking about. Okay, you might well be talking about a ride for cancer. I think that was true. That was the ride for cancer that came here, but maybe that was it. I thought it was a bike race, but maybe I was wrong. Okay, and talking about the old marathon route. Okay, so there was, before the pandemic, we used to have the Buffalo to Niagara marathon. I don't know whether that still goes on now. It used to be in October.
Yeah, I think probably COVID killed a lot of that, but I don't know if it got reignited. But definitely there is a zillion things that are outside of our sort of traditional look at Niagara Falls as a place. Yeah. Come here, look at the falls. We'll shake you down going up and down Clifton Hill. Make sure there's no dimes left in your pocket, and then tell you to go away. Because, but now what we want to do is have these people come here for a week or more. And to do that, you're going to have more affordable accommodation, let's face it. But look, if you go someplace for a week or 2 weeks vacation, let's say you go up north, but you could actually come here because there's beaches your family could swim at in Port Colborne. There's history, and there's the falls themselves, and there's biking you could do with your family. There's all kinds of things you want to put out there for the average person. Right now,
also, the other thing about it is we also need more than just tourism, is we've often said that.
Well, yes, we have, but this particular whole idea is our tourism is underexploited.
Okay, so
that's the whole point of the article here. Is our tourism is completely underexploited, and it could be easily twice as much as it is. So says Joe.
Okay. And I have a question for you, Dave. What does parochial mean?
Parochial? Parochial means, it originally meant parish, right? A parochial decision is one of the parish. But what it had come to mean in the use that mostly it is used today, and the way I'm using it, it means very limited ideas. And the idea comes from you can't see outside your own parish. You're very parochial. Yeah. The people of that area are parochial. That means they're traditional. That means they have no imagination of difference. So they're inwardly looking. They can only see what is what they normally do. So inside the parish, basically, that's where that comes from. Not a worldly looking view.
All right, let's move on to something entirely different. Band-Aid at 40. So do they know it's Christmas time at all? apparently those words have been under a lot of criticism, and I don't read them in the way that most people read them. I knew back in 1984 that Ethiopia was one of the world's oldest Christian countries, and Christianity had been there for a long time. I think the question was about that term. Do they know it's Christmas time at all? Related to the starving, the poor, those living in abject poverty, those that didn't know it was Christmas time.
Well, this is unfortunately I never really liked the song myself. I thought it was too oh, look at those poor people, we can help them, what's wrong with us? But this, even though I don't like the song very much, I did understand that it was part of what collected a lot of money for starving Ethiopians at the time, and it has saved hundreds of thousands, probably millions of lives ever since it was begun with Bob Geldof way back. Now there is a huge amount of criticism to it, and there's a lot of people who are really, they understand the worth of the song and World Vision, the Band-Aid thing, because of the money it's generated, and they are very appreciative of the generosity of the first world. But on the other hand, they balk at the fact that how come we are Ethiopia. We are the second country in the whole world that adopted Christianity as a state religion. The second after Armenia. So Armenia typically is thought to be the very first country that adopted Christianity as its religion, and Ethiopia was second, but they're almost really tied. And so Ethiopian is got into trouble, and so there's a lot of criticism that there is a lot of this colonial attitude towards Africa, meaning they're all poor, they're all dumb, we need to feed them, they are always starving, there's never any happiness. Well, remember at the time when Geldof got all the Irish and British musicians all together to sing this song.
Don't forget Mid-Europe, by the way, big part of it, but yeah.
And they got all the musicians together and they did something. I mean, people like George Harrison and his concert for Bangladesh and Farm Aid and other things happened, but this was a big one. I think it was one of the very first really big ones, and it was very successful. But the kind of vision that they used was irksome to a lot of the Africans. They said, you're all lumping us into one country. We're not. We're a bunch of different countries. And to make Africa look as if it's nothing but a poor place, unhappy place is unfortunate. It adds to the Westerners.
This all started because a plane from South Africa that was supposed to fly through to Europe got diverted and had to land in Addis Ababa, and they then, this had a film crew on the thing. They couldn't take off because they had technical issue with the plane. So, of course, the film crew went out and explored.
Yes.
And this is when they found the starving people of Ethiopia.
Well, remember also at that particular time, Haile Selassie had been overturned. He had been the emperor of Ethiopia. Oh, wow. Since the 20s, or at least early 30s.
Something like that. Yeah. So a long time. Yeah.
And a communist type of government overtook the monarchy. And it wasn't a very good one. And there was internal fighting and wars. They shut down a lot of the communications with the outside world. And it was and they shut down, and this is what Geldof has said. I mean, the Africans or the critics are saying, yes, of course we knew it was Christmas. And Geldof reminded them that Christmas was canceled by the Communist Party, the political
Of course,
agents at
yeah.
the time.
And that's exactly it.
Starving people who are unaware of, are not allowed to celebrate their holidays may very well not be aware that it was Christmas Day. They couldn't even.
And that's what those lines meant. Because when you see those lines in the original film, do they know it's Christmas time at all? You're seeing the pot-belly kids who are starving on the streets of Ethiopia.
Yeah, and remember too that there was severe famine there. There were, and this arrangement did, but the complaints being that there were colonial attitudes towards the Ethiopians and sort of lumped them all in with all African misery. But I think it was fair to be able to do that at that time. You remember, if you look at late night TV, there were always things for World Vision or Plan or something else. And what do they show? They show people who quite often they used to show people starving children and people in abject poverty. Well, if you went to Ethiopia, you're not going to see or Kenya or something like that. You could find that, but you'll also find areas of prosperity and hope. So I think they did it. How else are you gonna make an image? How else are you gonna make an impression without being shocking? I think that was probably their idea.
And the other thing about it is Ethiopia was run. It was at the time run by warlords. That's for sure. It was a quasi-communist regime, and no aid got through. Well, that's actually an important aspect because once they raised the money, Bob Geldof himself drove trucks into parts of Ethiopia to make sure that the people got the aid.
Yes, and all the dictators and all the warlords at that particular time would be glad that these trucks are coming in because that would be one of the things that sort of cooled down the discontent of the people when they're having a hard enough time controlling them. They were awful very brutal. I've read things about that period of time, and somebody starts with a letter. All I can remember, Douglas or Doug. I can't remember exactly, but there were some brutal regimes that, unfortunately, Ethiopia just stopped for a while there.
Yes, it did.
I have a CDs called Ethiopique. It's called actually because a French guy did it, but it was all kinds of different tunes from all different venues of Ethiopian music at the time, and that just kind of came screeching to a halt. And that's what makes it valuable, because some of these musicians aren't even known. They were being recorded and they were being played, but as it turns out, some don't even know who they were and where they went, because the resulting regime was so brutal. It probably just erased a lot of the culture of the time.
It did. It was a brutal regime, and that of course is part of the reason why what they found in Addis Ababa was starvation, rampant starvation.
Yes. Well, let me tell you a little bit. I'll try to do this really quick. I heard this Ethiopian guy. He'd been a refugee from Ethiopia. So of course, all this is happening. He's starving and everything. So he gets out and he ends up going down, heading more south towards Africa. And he's almost dead. And a priest somewhere, probably in Mozambique or something like that, is able to help him and a bunch of others. So he feeds them, cares for them, makes them better, because he's a priest. He feels that's what priests do, basically. So, real ones anyway. So this guy now is better. So now he's trying to find it, but he's unwelcome everywhere. So he tries to find a way out. So he smuggles his way onto a South Korean ship, right, hoping that whenever the thing lands, he'll be able to get refugee status, but they find him. And you know what they do to him? They put him and another guy in barrels and put them out to sea. In other words, they're in a barrel and they're floating in these barrels, and they just let them off because they don't want them on the ship when they come to port. That's how cruelly they were treated. Somebody comes along and finds them and finally recuperates them, and his long journey ends up. And I think part of it was gangs and stuff like that exploiting him. So finally he ends up in the West someplace. But there's the harrowing story of what some of these poor people have to put up with. Yeah.
And we've still got a refugee crisis out of Africa today.
Yeah, but we don't have one of starvation. We have one of economic opportunity.
We do.
That's the biggest problem. Most of them are men.
A lot of the starvation that we used to see, you know, how many times, if you wind the clock back to the 60s, 70s, and 80s, there would be a film crew in Africa and there would be starvation in wherever they landed.
Well, yeah, and that hit the headline.
Kids and the like, you know.
And that unfortunately we get a lot of our information from the press, but the press are always looking for the most sensational type of story, the one that most evokes most emotions. So we don't get a really good idea of
starving kids are always the top of the emotion block. Hang on, Baby Doc DePalia, Baby Doc, is he the leader? Or was that
was Haiti. You're thinking of
Haiti. You're right.
Thinking of
Baby Doc DePalia. Yeah,
Baby Doc DePalia. Yeah, he was a brutal drug addict dictator. He followed in his father's footsteps.
Papa Doc as well.
Papa Doc,
he was
Papa
even
Doc,
worse.
And what was his secret police? The Tai or Tao.
Yeah.
Jamut, Tao Jamut or something like that. Anyway, I can't remember.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So we want to cover this one because we know it's going to be coming our way. Snowfall warning for Calgary and southern Alberta. We know it's coming here, right?
Nope. Don't go here. It's much nicer south of where you are. Just head that way.
Just head that way, yeah. But they've been hit this week by snowfalls. Pretty bad out there in Calgary. Because obviously mid-November, nobody expects it.
Well, I hear we're going to get a dusting later this week, so we'll see. I hope not. I'm still wearing my sandals. I finally started wearing long pants yesterday, and I got I still have been wearing my sandals. So I would be quite disappointed with Mother Nature if she doesn't sort of turn off the snow tap, basically. I want to continue to wear my sandals, and so
they're talking about 35 centimeters by Sunday morning in Calgary, but it's which is unusual for Calgary because the temperatures over the last few nights have been in quite high negatives.
Well, as long as they're prepared for it, because this means accidents. If it's rather warm now and a big dumping of snow happens, a lot of it then melts, but then with the snow on top of the melt water, it then turns to ice. You get black ice and slippery conditions. So it's going to be a sort of a cautious time for Alberta drivers. And believe me, that white stuff's coming here. Yeah, I got in a car accident at this time of year in Dunnville with a big snowstorm. I remember that day very clearly because I had to dig out my car and I had to dig out. We had two cars I lived on Ontario Avenue, so I had a parking lot off of River Lane and I had a parking lot off of Ontario Avenue. Had to dig out two cars, got soaking wet, had to change my clothes and then take off. What happened was I left my wallet in my wet pants, and then anyway, I got in an accident later that day. Got a ticket for not having my license on me.
Isn't that the case? Isn't that the case?
Yeah, what a jerk! Really, seriously, he couldn't give me a ticket for anything else, but he was just giving tickets out like crazy when there was a pile of all these people getting in accidents on the bridge. It was like his, oh, good, I can get a pile of tickets, and I don't have
You need to, when you're going out, Dave, especially when you've changed clothes because you got your further ones there. You got to pat yourself down, make sure you've got all your belongings on you.
Yeah, well, remember, I was late for work by now. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I had to phone work to tell them, look, I'm going to be late because I had to dig myself out. Yeah. Anyway, but that was on the way back home that I got in the accident, not the way there. So, but anyway, everyone, this is the time of year they're going to have to be very, very careful. Make sure your car's in top running order. You don't want to be stuck at this time of year. It's time to be very careful. Watch out for kids too. Remember, there's kids crossing the road. Even if the guy comes out with a sign to help the kids cross the road, and you touch your brakes and you can't stop, you know what? That's that thing. This time of year, you have you come to stop signs or remember, when you approach a crossing for kids to go across the road, slow down well ahead of time before you get there. Crawl through that at about 30K, even if you don't see a guy with a sign, because if you do have to stop, your car is going to just carry if you're on ice or slush. Yeah. And that actually, unfortunately, that happened to a friend of mine who was a cop out west. That's exactly what happened. There was a kid crossing the road properly, and the guy that was coming, who was not driving very fast or anything, could not stop his vehicle and hit a little girl and killed her. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And he didn't do anything wrong, nothing wrong at all. No one did anything wrong, but he couldn't stop his car. Another guy I know, same thing. He killed a kid in a van because he could not stop his car. All right. So be very careful.
So to go back to the last thing, by the way, about Ethiopia, it was not Idi Amin, by the way.
No. Haile Selassie was
the military government, provisional military government, was called the Derg.
That's it. That's the D word I was looking for. Yeah.
Yeah. Not run by any individual. It wasn't an individual. It was the military committee or council officially of the Provincial Military Council, and was a military dictatorship that ruled Ethiopia, including present-day Eritrea from 1974 to 1987.
Yes.
So there we go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Remember, Ethiopians are very, very unique people.
Yeah.
They almost did not include themselves with other Africans at all. They thought they were, and there's some sort of substantiation for that, because there are connections with them in Yemen. Ethiopia has been a crossroads forever. In fact, they had the Falashan Jews in Ethiopia. They are Ethiopians, Black Ethiopians who are Jewish, and they're Falashan Jews. And when the rabbis of Israel examined them to see if they were real Jews or not, they said, yeah, they are. And then when they did DNA, they did the same thing.
Yeah.
Same as the Lemba Jews down in South Africa, too.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So I needed to find that out because Chris was suggesting various names there with Baby Doc and Idi Amin. And I knew it wasn't either of those ones. So I had to find out.
Baby Doc Duvalier was Haiti.
Yeah.
Papa Doc Duvalier was his brutal father. They were both brutal.
Yeah.
Idi Amin was the syphilis insane leader of Uganda. he was the brutal dictator there. As far as individual dictators, it was the Derg. What was it? The Derg. Yeah, that D word I was thinking of.
The Derg. Yeah.
That was the brutal military dictatorship. They
There
were
wasn't
communist leaning as well.
But there wasn't an official. There wasn't a specific leader of the Derg. That one would remember, although Mengistu Haile Mariam was actually military officer who was head of state between 77 and 91.
Yeah, so there were
left-leaning
individuals.
Yeah,
remember also too that it's very hard, even if it's a communist government or apolitical or Republican. There are four distinct ethnicities in Ethiopia, and it's been that way for probably 2,000 years or more. They have the Omo. That's the only one I remember, unfortunately. They have the people that live in the north, the south. Some are
Ethiopia.
Basically, some are merchants, some are intellectuals, but like each different tribe or each different ethnicity has a speciality in part of their socioeconomic order. And the Oromo are, I think, the most vast of the four different major ethnic groups.
Yeah, and this individual that I was just saying was actually the General Secretary of the Workers' Party of Ethiopia from 1984 to 91.
Yeah, it's very strongly.
And was chairman of the Derg for that period as well.
Yeah, it's very strongly communist oriented, but it was like kind of an imperfect communism.
But it wasn't part of the Soviet bloc, as far as I recall.
They were supplied by them with weapons. Their weapons came from the Soviet Union in those days.
Okay.
But it was one of these offshoot communist things that were very peculiar, like the Khmer Rouge. The Khmer Rouge was an offshoot Maoist sort of communist thing that got really weird, and so was the Derg. So there was
but also when you look at it, there was also that group that Che Guevara tried to set up in what was that, in Namibia?
Bolivia.
No, I mean, actually, he set up in Africa. He was in Namibia, I think it was.
No, I don't think he ever got to Africa. I think that was subsequent guys. I think Cuba got involved in what was then called Southwest Africa and Angola.
Yeah, Angola. Yeah.
And
Che was involved. Che was actually involved in that before his death.
I thought he got shot up in Bolivia.
I know he got shot in Bolivia, but that was
in South America.
Yeah, but he was actually involved. I was watching a documentary about the development of communist Cuba, and particularly intrigued by Che Guevara because, of course, he's got romantic. There's a lot of romantic love for Che Guevara, isn't there?
Well, the Motorcycle Chronicles, that documentary / movie kind of thing was very, very interesting. You could see the development of his revolutionary ideas. Unfortunately, they became violent ideas, and he may or may not. He may have been involved in Namibia, Southwest Africa, Angola area, but I think he's much more famous for his.
Oh, he's way more famous for his intervention in Bolivia. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and his principal role in creating Cuba as a communist state and a successful revolution. In many ways, he was kind of the brains behind Castro.
Well, he was actually quite the military. He turned out, even though he wasn't a military person, he turned out to be quite the military leader.
Yeah, he turned out to be very, very adaptable to military tactics.
And he wasn't Cuban, by the way, either, was he? He was Bolivian as well, I think.
I'm not so sure about that. I knew he did live in Cuba.
He lived in Cuba, but he was not. He was.
I thought he was born and raised in Cuba.
No, Che Guevara, I think he wasn't born in Cuba. I think he was. Okay. Well, according to this, he was born.
Born where?
He was born in Rosario, Argentina.
Argentina. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, and he was, I think you had roots in being a doctor or something like that. I don't know how long he lived in.
He was,
Cuba.
yes, he was a medical doctor. Yes, he was.
Yeah. So anyway, that's a different story altogether. We do know that he became a extraordinarily good, but he was also very brutal. At that time, whether you're a fascist or communist, unfortunately, they had this idea, like it seems like the Israelis have right now in Gaza: the ends justify the means. Doesn't matter how many people you kill. That's kind of almost like the same thing that Mao and Hitler and all these dictators all seem to have the same idea. The ends justify the means. All the sacrifices of today are warranted for the future. Which is sort of not what the average person thinks at all. So they can be brutal and bloodthirsty and overcome their basic moral essence, if you like, that thing that stops us from willy-nilly killing one another. Anyway, that's a complete different story anyway. So
yeah. Oh yeah. He's a fascinating character in and of his own right. Guevara is.
Yeah, I don't think he's in the lyrics of Band-Aid song anywhere. So we really drifted away from the essence of the story.
A million miles away from the Band-Aid song. Yeah.
Yeah. So that basically, to wrap up that one, is that there is a lot of problems with the wording and the effects of those songs, but all the Ethiopians or other people of that, you have to remember that from where the vision is, who is singing the song and why are they singing it and why do they use the images that they do use. It's misinterpreted a lot. I think there's mutual misinterpretation there. Yeah, there's a fair amount of ignorance on the side of the Westerners who are singing the song, but there's also a misinterpretation by those in the countries that have relief in Africa. It comes to a point where nobody can say anything without criticism. And remember that this Bob Geldof has clearly said this is a song. It is a song. That's all it is. It's a song.
Yes.
It's
well, I was going to say,
and it was meant to address the fact that Christmas was canceled in Ethiopia by the religion, by the Dreg and the Derg. I mean, and that there was no food, there was no happiness. Then things were desperate, and then for everyone else to look at that and say that it comes from a colonial attitude is not really fair.
It was a song that was written to deal with a desperate situation. By the way, I went to Kenya a few years after that. I think it was 88 or 89, and there was no starvation in Kenya. There was no pot-bellied children in Kenya.
Well, no, and but there were in Ethiopia.
Poor people, but not the same.
Yeah. No, there weren't. And like I say, Ethiopians are very, very distinctive. They're in an area, an ancient Christian country, that was the only country that was not colonized. It got
the only country in Africa that was not colonized. Yes, absolutely correct.
It got defeated and occupied by the Italians in the late 30s there briefly, but it was never colonized. It was a strong country. It has a fabulous history and is one of the oldest Christian nations on earth. Aside from Armenia, it is the second oldest state and country that adopted Christianity. And they have a very unique type of Christianity too, much more Old Testament, I think.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing is about it, there's also some churches that are actually down. If you walk across the
Carved
land,
right out of the rock, carved
right out the rock, and they're underground. Where you walk across the land, all you see is a barren rock surface, and then down there is a church carved out. Fascinating.
Yes. Instead of building it, quarrying stone and building it in a certain place, they went right to the quarry basically and chiseled the church out of the rock itself, the quarry. It's an amazing. If you look at it, it looks like any other, like a cathedral or big church, but there's no mortar, no bricks or anything because they chiseled it right out of the rock. It's amazing.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
See it.
Yeah. Absolutely intriguing
As soon as
place.
they stop fighting in Tigray and all those other places, it's driving me mad. Can't go to Ethiopia because it can't stop fighting. Stop fighting.
Yeah. So Dave can go there. Yeah. All right. Okay.
Even if you stop you swear that you can stop for 2 weeks or 3 weeks so I can go there, then it might trigger the idea that, yeah, it's better this way.
Yeah. He'll book the ticket on the first plane in to Addis Ababa.
Yes. Wouldn't mind seeing the Blue Nile Dam as well.
Actually, my son went to Africa last year through Addis Ababa.
You did, eh?
Yeah. They've got good Ethiopian Airlines out of basically Ethiopian Airlines and a number of African airlines now. You can fly direct to Africa without touching Europe.
Wow.
From Canada, from Toronto.
Africa is a big place.
Yes.
But like,
well, there's a new number of airlines now that are
the largest continent in the world. Yeah.
Yeah. Going straight rather than landing in Europe. All right. So there we go. All right. Well, thanks everybody, and thanks for being here. We're 8:05 now.
Yes. Thanks very much. And go Bernie Sanders, go. He's asking for the weapons to stop pouring out of the United States and into that hellhole called Gaza and Lebanon. I hope that he's successful. He won't be, of course, but at least he's got the spine, man. He's got. It's
okay. On the 21st, on the 21st of January next year, he'll be arrested, like the rest of them.
Well, we didn't get into Trump's tariff thing, but that's another.
We'll get there
tomorrow.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Without further ado, I bid you adieu. Pray